Today is a special day. It is the 40th anniversary of when Thomas and Friends first aired on TV. Since the release of the first episode of the show, Thomas and Gordon. And ever since that day, we were graced with an icon. When you think about it, 40 years is a long time ago, and ever since then, Thomas has been relevant for a long time. There is always something new coming out from the brand. Thomas is a show that has impacted many people around the world, myself included. It is a show I can't see myself not living without. It's been there all of my life, ever since I was born. Thomas was a gateway to many things to me as a kid. It was my gateway to loving trains, it was my gateway to learning lessons that I would have learned if I wasn't kind of stupid as a kid, and so many more. Today, I want to go into how Thomas inspires people and how we keep that legacy alive. This video is going to be a very personal one. I have been with this show for all my life, and talking about it again after I released my Magic Railroad review is a little weird, since I normally talk about one piece of media from a franchise I love and then move on to the next one. But hey, I thought about making this video, and here we are. It may not be a long one, but I hope you enjoy it. Now, the real question that needs to be answered first is, what about Thomas makes us love it to begin with? Thomas as a show is a pretty simple one. It was all about these trains and their everyday life on a fictional island called Sodor. It may not sound all that special to an average Joe, but if you look a little deeper into the show, you can see there is so much more than what's on the surface. The first season alone could tell us many things about the show would be like for the next 2 decades of its classic run. Within this batch of 26 episodes, we get character journeys that will span for seasons on end, some fun crashes that will give us some action and fun, a memorable cast of characters that will stick out, and snappy pacing with great writing that can be enjoyed by both kids and adults. All of that is from the first season of the show. They would play with so much more in the show afterwards. The characters would learn and become better engines throughout the classic seasons. They would play with themes that would shake up how Thomas was conceived. They would bring in more characters that can bring in new dynamics with characters we already loved. And they would increase the action all the way to season 5, where it was made to be action-packed for the movie. Thomas worked so well back then, since it was evolving in a natural way. All of these things that evolved would give us something new to think about, and would spark our creativity. The later years, to a good extent, even worked with this. They gave us new characters that we loved and saw what they would get into, and it was always something that would spark imagination. Most of the characters in Thomas will stick in your head for their personalities and character dynamics. You perhaps love Thomas because he was the everyman with a compelling character journey, fun rivalry with James in the later seasons, and the satisfaction of his and Gordon's alliance. You perhaps liked Henry because he has layers to him compared to the other big engines with his calm side that has a deep appreciation for the forest. Great chemistry with Gordon with their sibling rivalry and compelling character journey in the first season. Or perhaps you love Percy because he embodies the childlike wonder that still is in all of us to this day. Fun episodes that show that he had the biggest adventures out of all the engines and a natural and evolving friendship with Thomas. As a kid, we loved the show because it is about these trains getting into these crashes and just having fun with them. But as adults, we love the show because it has characters that we love to watch, learning throughout the show, getting into action-packed scenarios, or just doing their day-to-day job. There is a quote by Isabella Scrupico. I really do hope I said that right. The most simple things can bring the most happiness. And I think that quote embodies the appeal of Thomas. One thing about the show that has absolutely changed the lives of so many people in the world is in terms of the filmmaking aspects of the show. This one is more recent than back then, but it still is focused around the theme of inspiring. I am an inspiring filmmaker. I want to make stuff for people to enjoy and think about for years on end. Looking into Thomas's filmmaking has opened my eyes like never before. When David Minton was on that set, he put his A game into making this show feel real. Even in the later model years of Thomas, there is so much to the craft of filming models that I think gets a bit overlooked in this era. They did many unique things with the show and kept on doing something new. Season 1 was very stationary to make it look like the book pages went to life. Season 2 played more with panning and moving shots. Season 3 played with using real water on sets. Season 4 gave us mountain sets that was used to show off the amazing set work. Season 5 played with stunts and front-facing shots. Season 6 and 7 is where I would say is when they reached the peak of their abilities, but later Model Thomas is still interesting to learn about and watch because it still had those same filmmaking techniques that were used ever since day one. For the problems that the hit era had, the directing and filmmaking was always a highlight for me. And it doesn't have to stop with the model stuff of Thomas. The animation side of Thomas definitely has its perks. The animation of Thomas was always pretty good ever since the full switch in 2009 with Hero of the Rails in season 13. But when we reached season 19, where they really got into the groove you can say, it was when it really set in how pretty it was. But the one aspect of the show I did not expect that would inspire so many people is the music side of Thomas. I've always spoken highly of the music in Thomas, but let me go into further detail why that is. The musicians of classic Thomas, and I would argue CGI Thomas, knew that good music, no matter what medium it's presented in, will appeal to any age, and that statement has held the test of time. Every character theme, all the songs, the goddamn score to Sordor's Legend of the Lost Treasure are all something that has stood the test of time and has appealed to all ages. I should have known that the music side of Thomas was influential when I heard the main theme of the classic run of Thomas. Everyone and their grandmother knows the theme song to this tank engine. Hell, Thomas's soundtrack alone has inspired kids who would become professional musicians. Right there, I think, says it all.
I've met a lot of musicians at universities or teaching at music schools, and off the top of my head, I can think of 3 of them who were musical prodigies, achieving national level solo performance before the age of 18. And all of them had big musical brains, able to think about music and harmony on a level I couldn't approach without years of practice. And all of them professed having loved the Thomas the Tank Engine soundtrack from an early age.
No matter what side of the process of making the show, whether it be from writing, filmmaking, or music, there is no denying that the people who have worked on the show have definitely inspired me to make my own stuff, and have inspired the many fans out there making their own content or filming their own stuff on a film set or on YouTube. And I think that is something fascinating to think about. Now, we went over how Thomas as a show can inspire people. Now let's get into what that inspiration has affected on the world and the internet. I think something that I wish I knew earlier with my time on the internet was the people in the Thomas community on YouTube. When I was a kid, I didn't think there were any Thomas communities or people who generally talked about Thomas. Thomas on YouTube was how I mainly watched episodes of the show till I found out it was on Netflix. But when I was a teenager, I realized that there were many Thomas fans out there speaking about the show and making fan content about it. We all know some of the bigger people in this community. The Unlucky Tug, Thomas Theorist, Caleb Trains, Brendan Reese 10, Diesel D199, Train Modeler, Bluebell, Thomas Tank Merch, etc. But there is one Thomas YouTuber that probably impacted me more than any of these other channels. Percy Engine 619 was a channel where they would remake episodes of the show using Trackmaster toys. Now, this doesn't seem like a special thing anymore, but to kid me, this was one of his favorite channels to watch. Watching episodes he hasn't seen and watching episodes that he already watched a million times being remade using trains that I could buy and play with. It made me think, what if I made my own stories with my own trains, and I would play with my Thomas trains for all of my childhood from the age of 4 to the age of 12. I may not play with these toys anymore, but that doesn't mean that these channels haven't inspired me to do my own things. They inspired me to make my own Thomas videos, inspired me to talk about the show with people and friends of mine, and it's even inspired me to try my hand at my own Thomas stories that I want to show the world one day. Model making isn't off the table either. We all know that Thomas stood out because it was filmed with models. Many people have made their own models, and it astounds me how creative the people who make these models are. I mean, Trainboy alone made me want to try and make my own models, but I don't have the money for that yet, so we'll put a pin on that in the future. The music side of Thomas has also hit the creativity side really hard. We have some talented folks on YouTube who make great covers of Thomas songs and themes. Headmaster Hastings, Francis S., Instrument Maniac, and Upside Down, who made the incredible Thomas Reorchestrated playlist. Thomas will always give us a spark of creativity, no matter what, and I think it has done that to many people around the world already. And this section is proof enough. Before I end things here, I think one thing that needs to be said is this. No matter what happens to the Thomas and Friends brand, one thing is for certain. Thomas is a show that has the power to inspire people. Why do you think it has lasted this long to begin with? We may turn our noses at All Legends Go, but one thing you can't deny is that it is giving kids exposure to Thomas. We may have the reboot, like I said, but kids of the next generation can watch the classic series in seasons 18 to 21 on Amazon Prime. We have all those Thomas channels on YouTube making stuff from their imagination and love for the show that will inspire kids to make believe with their imagination, to make their own stuff or try to be creative. And the people who grew up with the show are going to show it to their kids when they are older and introduce it to their friends who may have missed out on the show. I know that if I get kids, or my siblings get kids, I am definitely going to get them into the show along with other ones that I love dearly. All I have left to say is this. Happy 40th anniversary, Thomas and Friends. You have made a lot of our childhoods, and you will continue to make more kids happy to this day.